Joining us, MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone Lopez, MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell, and senior reporter at The Bulwark, Will Sommer. I am so proud of myself for saying MS Now both of those times. Congratulations to all of us on this new day. I guess, Laura, first to you, why is the president so upset with Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Katie, as you well know, as Michael knows, was one of his biggest supporters. But she is not backing off on getting a full release of the Epstein files. And despite the president saying over the weekend that House Republicans should just go ahead and release all of the files, that he, quote, has that Republicans, quote, have nothing to hide, his actions leading up to all of this say the opposite. The president bringing people to the White House, trying to talk to other House Republicans to get them to take their names off of. Those are all indications that he doesn't want this released. I think it's notable that in his recent comments, in his recent Truth Social post, he said the House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally, quote, legally entitled to. And so there are some legal experts who have talked to us who have said that that may mean that if Justice Department does launch an investigation into these Democratic figures who potentially have ties to Jeffrey Epstein, that if they launch that investigation, then the White House and Justice Department can turn around and say, there's an ongoing investigation, we cannot release all of the files. Now, we asked the White House today why. Why did the president do this massive about-face on the Epstein files publicly? And White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said to us that President Trump has been consistently calling for transparency related to the Epstein files for years by releasing tens of thousands of pages of documents, cooperating with House oversight subpoena, and calling for investigation into Epstein's Democratic friends. But again, Katie, if the president wanted these files released, he could simply order the Justice Department to release all of these files, and he has not done that. And we've also asked the White House if the president is going to encourage Senate Republicans to take up this vote if it passes the House, and the White House has not answered that question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I want to ask you that, Michael. First, let me play, and Laura was just alluding to this, what Thomas Massie said about the 180.
I think we could have a deluge of Republicans. There could be 100 or more. I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. And, you know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax. If it's a hoax, this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
I think it's so interesting that he wants a veto-proof majority that says that he believes that if it ends up getting past the Senate, that they're going to need that to force the president to release it or to override him. What are the chances? Oh, first off, what's the status quo right now in the House? Is it going to be 100 votes among Republicans on these files?
Yeah, I think so, Katie. Look, it's worth mentioning that those comments from Thomas Massie were from Sunday. Those came before President Trump did make this 180 and actually endorsed this effort in the House to release the Epstein files. So if Massie's internal whip count, and let's not forget, he is the Republican co-sponsor on this effort, if his whip count before Trump's blessing was that it could reach 100, I think the floodgates are now open. Now, he points out the rightly question, just how many lawmakers will support this, and will it reach the point of a veto-proof majority? Now, that would be around 289 members of Congress. There are about 212 Democrats, 213 in the House right now. That'd be a sizable chunk of Republicans who would have to get it past that two-thirds mark. But as I mentioned, Massie was saying before the president's support, it was going to get there. Certainly, I would think afterwards it would get there as well. Then the big question, as you've been mentioning, is going to be on Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Does he put this legislation on the floor? He hasn't given any indication, but certainly if this passes the House, especially with that veto-proof majority, the pressure is going to be immense on him to stage a vote.
And Michael, you said 289 for a veto-proof majority?
That's right. Yeah, 433 members in the House right now, two-thirds of that 289.
If it's more than 100 Republicans, it sounds like they are going to get that. Let me play an ad released by the Epstein survivors, and let's talk about whether this might pressure the Senate to vote yes. Let's play it.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
I suffered so much pain. I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
It is a powerful ad. I mean, it's not as if Jeffrey Epstein had a daughter and these were her friends that came around. He's just meeting 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds willy-nilly without having, I guess, family connections, which makes it, it's just so gross. Will, that ad right there is powerful. It's clear where the House is going on this. Is there any sense that you're getting in terms of pressure that Senate lawmakers might be feeling? I know there's not even a promise that this is going to get taken up in the Senate.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, just a few days ago, I think we had all assumed that this would die in the Senate, it would go away. But I think number one, Donald Trump flipping here and saying, essentially, trying to avoid the Republican defection by letting them go on their own accord. That's going to put pressure on the Senate. And I think there's been a very effective pressure campaign run here by both the Epstein survivors. I mean, I think this is a very powerful ad, as you said. It underlines, I mean, we've seen some elements of right-wing media trying to whitewash Epstein's crimes. People like Megyn Kelly saying, well, these were late teenagers, nearly 18, more barely legal. I mean, crazy stuff like that. You see the opposite case made in that ad there. And Democrats, I think, also releasing these emails, these really incendiary emails suggesting Epstein had some kind of leverage or believed he did on Trump. And all that suggests that I think the pressure is going to mount on the Senate, and maybe this will come to a vote after all.
I mean, Bloomberg reported back in August, and the question is, if the House votes yes, if the Senate votes yes, if it gets to the president and he signs it, what are we going to see exactly? Because Bloomberg was reporting back in August that there's a bunch of redactions that have already been made, according to three people familiar, that the team tasked with conducting a final review of the voluminous cash had applied the redactions before the DOJ and the FBI concluded last month that no further disclosure of the files would be appropriate or warranted. Again, this is from August, and these redactions have to do with Donald Trump and the names of other prominent public figures from the documents. Do you have concerns or questions about what we might not see, even if this does get released?
I think it's going to be very difficult to trust the Trump Justice Department when it comes to the idea that all of these documents are being released or that anything that mentions Trump would be released. I mean, we know Senator Dick Durbin has said that he heard from FBI agents who were involved in the review of the files that they were supposed to flag every mention of Trump's name. Obviously, the Bloomberg reporting backs that up. And then there's the aspect we've seen FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi, when they go in front of the House and the Senate for their typical hearing and they're asked, what was up with this document name review? What happened to the files that involve Trump's name? And they won't answer. They totally stonewall. And that suggests to me that something involving Trump's name, when it came up, that potentially those documents were redacted or removed.
Let me play one of the Epstein survivors talking to my colleague Chris Jansing a little bit earlier today. This is Liz Stein.
This is not a political issue. It's been highly politicized by this current administration. This is a crime, and it's a crime of sex trafficking, and we just want to see justice for what was perpetrated against us. I'm really hopeful that people will see this through a human lens and vote on the right side of us, because this is a crime that, by our government's own admission, has over 1,000 victims. We were girls and young women, and we had promising futures that were taken away from us.
Laura, is the White House talking about what the president might do? Will he sign it?
The White House isn't answering that question, Katie. They're not answering whether or not he's going to encourage senators to take up this vote. They're not answering whether or not he's going to sign it, despite the fact that they are repeatedly claiming that he supports the full release of these files. And just moments ago, they put out a press release calling out Democrats trying to direct attention and deflect and distract towards Democrats and saying that they are fully focused on this investigation into Democratic figures. But playing that ad, Katie, I think it's so striking because, again, the survivors are trying to keep the public and politicians in power focused on the fact that this is about the victims and about the survivors. And one thing that was so striking that the president said recently, he was asked about the transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker, to a low security prison and whether or not he would pardon her. And he essentially said, I don't know if I've thought about it. I've thought about it a little bit. I haven't thought about it. I don't know if I will pardon her. I don't know if I won't pardon her. He went back and forth and back and forth. And one thing that the White House has not really answered, that the Bureau of Prisons hasn't answered, is why hasn't the president decided to or directed the Bureau of Prisons director to move Ghislaine Maxwell back to a high security prison, a convicted sex trafficker? And no one inside the administration has taken credit for her transfer and who actually signed off on that.
The MAGA Eat MAGA world as a vote looms to release the Epstein files. Donald Trump today finding himself in a position he's never really found himself in before, completely out of control of his own political movement and in a knockdown, drag-out fight with one of MAGA's biggest stars. He's now forced to change his tune, at least temporarily, as the push for transparency on the criminal case of his former friend, the dead sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, goes on. Donald Trump posted overnight a very, very, very long message. It read in part, quote, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. The House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to, switching to all caps, I don't care. But of course we know that's not true. Of course he cares. He cares a whole lot. He could have released the files as soon as he was inaugurated on January 20th. He could have released the files instead of trying to sweep them all under the rug with some weird unsigned DOJ memo back in July, which was so weird it started the whole suspicious furor from his own coalition in the first place. And if he honestly didn't care, his aides wouldn't have summoned Congresswoman Lauren Boebert last week to the sit room in the basement of the West Wing to get her to remove her signature from the discharge petition that triggered the vote to release the Epstein files. That vote now scheduled for tomorrow. In the Oval Office a couple of minutes ago, Trump added that, quote, sure I would, when he was asked if he would sign a bill to release the Epstein files if it passes the Senate. But on this issue, Trump is following his party, not leading it, which is also a weird place for him. Republican Thomas Massie is predicting a dam break moment when it comes up for a vote, while saying that the fight to release the files is far from over.
I think we could have a deluge of Republicans. There could be 100 or more. I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. And, you know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
Donald, they're on to you. Massie there is saying, in effect, that Trump may have lost this battle, but he does have other ways to keep the files from being released. Trump's rage over the Epstein files is also fueling a very ugly public brawl with another signer of the petition, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Trump, quote, withdrew his support with Greene in a post on Friday, calling her a traitor and a disgrace, among other nasty things. In the wake of Trump posting that about her, Marjorie Taylor Greene says she's getting hoax pizza deliveries and death threats, something that a lot of Trump critics have faced for many, many years now. But she says she's not backing down from supporting the release of the Epstein files. Watch.
The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor. And that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
Let's just hit pause here. It's an astonishing thing to happen to anyone that runs against Donald Trump. They're astonishing comments from someone like her, though, someone with a long history of herself pushing baseless conspiracy theories and supporting people and things that are violent and surrounded by violent rhetoric. In 2021, NPR summed up Marjorie Taylor Greene like this, quote, "She's denied that a plane hit the Pentagon on September 11th. She supported the idea that the Parkland school shooting was a false flag operation meant to usher in tighter gun laws. She seemed to agree that Hillary Clinton was recorded filleting a child's face. Marjorie Taylor Greene has also liked social media posts that called for executing deep state FBI agents or that advocated removing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi with, quote, a bullet to the head, end quote. Marjorie Taylor Greene supports QAnon and has said Muslims do not belong in government." So when she was pressed about her history of these things, of inflammatory and offensive comments, Greene said this.
I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country, and it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions, and I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another.
We'll call them cracks. They could become much bigger than that in the MAGA movement, driven by the Epstein files. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Our senior White House reporter, Vaughn Hilliard, is here with me at the table. Political analyst, former Senator Claire McCaskill's here. Also joining us, political analyst and host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here. Tim, I have to start with you. MTG, what do you think?
Look, it's hard to know what's going on in her brain, but I got to tell you this. I think it's important, in our society and our political culture, that we incentivize people coming back from the brink instead of just incentivize sending people over the edge. And I think that currently a lot of folks, whether it be the social media algorithms or running for Congress, getting small dollar donors or getting attention on TV, like the incentives are for politicians and even regular people to say the most crazy thing possible, the most extreme thing possible. And so seeing somebody who went down that path try to back off it and apologize, I think is a good thing. I don't think that we don't need to be snowed by her. I mean, you read through her history. I've heard some people say, complain that all this strange new respect for Marjorie Taylor Greene means people are whitewashing her. I haven't seen a lot of whitewashing of her, actually. I've seen a lot of people playing her comments now and within the context of her past experience. I think that's appropriate. And here's the thing. Regardless of what you think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, the person, and whether this is a genuine Saul of the Damascus moment or whether it's something else more personal, whether she's trying to get attention or something. A crack in the MAGA coalition is really only going to come from the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. And so everybody that wants the MAGA coalition to crack, anyone that is fighting against MAGA, that thinks they're an authoritarian threat, should welcome people that were part of MAGA, even if it's too little too late. Because right now, I think we've tried the route of trying to bring in people that are of the kind of college-educated, suburban, former Republican, moderate McCain types. Me and you fit in that boat, Nicole. We grabbed as many of those as we could, and Donald Trump still won last time. And so in order to crack his coalition now, you need to get people that were with him the third time after the insurrection, and that's going to be a gnarlier process, okay? That's going to be a gnarlier process. We're going to have issues with all those folks, and so if she wants to say she's sorry, if she wants to speak to this, if she's representative of other people out there who feel betrayed by him, who went with him the third time, that's a good thing.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's abuse will hold a news conference tomorrow morning, and that will happen ahead of the House vote to release the Epstein files. Now, some of those survivors have just released a very powerful, very emotional video, putting their stories front and center.
I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
One of those survivors, Jess Michaels, joins us now.
Ms. Michaels, welcome. Really special honor to have you here. That ad is searing. The way all of you sort of open up what has been a very difficult journey, long ignored, long misjudged by the public, long, hidden by very powerful men. Finding your voice, all of you, this way is an important step. Speak a little bit about coming off of that, the imagery that we see there, the women in that very sort of quiet, here I am. It's real, it's me. Talk about how important it is for America to know they're real. Now you're a grown woman, but at that time, you were 14, 15, 16-year-old girls that were abused by this man and these men who are still nameless. And we may or may not get to that in the conversation, but talk about just the moment of exposure to the world that you're taking. This is a big step.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael, first of all, for having me and for asking that question. And I will tell you that I was actually raped by Jeffrey Epstein at 22 years old. It was in 1991. I'm the earliest publicly known survivor. So I share that because I want people to know this has been going on so much longer than anyone's talking about. And he was a master manipulator in 1991. So gaining our voices together, which has been a beautiful experience, an excruciating experience at the same time. Before September 3rd, a lot of us had never met. And so we didn't even know each other's stories. So getting to know each other has been at the same time bonding, and it has been inspiring and supportive. And at the same time, it hurts just a little bit more because we also now have faces to the abuse and faces to these horrific stories, and it's our friends. It's our survivor sisters.
Right. And Jess, I look forward to living in a world where survivors are not called upon to have to revisit their abuse over and over again in order for stories to make it into news rundowns, in order for their stories to be taken seriously. Until we live in that world, I am grateful for women like you who have been very, very brave and put a lot on the line in order to come forward. Part of what you are doing is meeting with members of Congress. Can you tell us, have you met with any Republican members? What have you shared with them, and what has been the response?
We've been going into Republican Congress members for the last couple of weeks. We did more today. We will do more tomorrow. And sharing our stories with other humans, just human to human, sharing what happened, letting them ask us questions, sharing why the release of these files is so incredibly important. And we've actually been really well received. There's been a lot of compassion and empathy in the room. There's been a lot of surprise of the same thing that I was just saying. Putting a face to the abuse is very different than just hearing the tabloids, reading a headline, seeing some salacious pictures.
Have you met with any members who, in private, maybe after hearing your story, meeting you, apologized or made any promises that said, this interaction has changed something in them?
I have not, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. We know that this is a nonpartisan issue. Justice and courage should not be partisan issues. They're actually nonpartisan values that we would all strive for. So I have not met anyone that has apologized, specifically on the delays, because I know all the things you mentioned. We actually are dealing with insane levels of institutional betrayal and cowardice over and over and over every time this keeps getting delayed. So we're hoping at some point that there's some acknowledgement of that, because we haven't gotten that acknowledgement.
Help us understand, if you can, the balance between sharing your story and helping America process your experience in an authentic way. And at the same time, telling the names of the people who were involved, sort of give the appropriate context. To your point, you're talking the 1990s, you're talking the late 80s. It's not something that, in the last 5 years, 7 years has emerged. There's a long history here with a lot of names. I have, for example, what we saw happen to Andrew Mountbatten, Prince Andrew, and his fall from grace, having been exposed, and the story told of his involvement. What has that balance been like for all of you in sort of coming to the table with your story and then getting up to that door and deciding whether to open it or keep it closed?
We are all very well aware of the dangers of saying too much. Mm-hmm. We're also not little girls, and we're smart, and we are balancing what is appropriate to say and what's not appropriate to say, what keeps us safe, because right now no one is making an effort to protect us. And so we have to be conscientious about that. For me, my life mission is I very specifically talk about the injury of sexual harm and how it is long-lasting and how it is a brain and nervous system injury that affects every part of your life. And so that's how I balance it, because that's something that is not discussed, is how this is something that is concrete, causing physical debilitation, causing loss of career advancement and income potential, costing relationships over decades. And like I said, I'm 1991. I've been living with post-traumatic stress disorder for over 30 years. It has been horrific. It is not easy to be doing what I'm doing. I have to take breaks. Some of the other girls, they can keep going and they can do all the meetings, they can do all the media, and I have to ask for breaks. So that balance is really hard, not just in what we say and what we don't say, but how much we exert effort and where we exert effort. But that's also the really beautiful experience of all of us now connected. We just are there for each other. Yeah. We really lift each other up, and we say, I got you. I know you can't be there tomorrow, but I got that. I can take it off your plate. And I have found a group of women that inspire me daily.
Donald Trump completely reversed his position last night, saying that every Republican in the House should vote to release the Epstein files, which means logically that every Republican in the Senate should vote to release the Epstein files. And then today, Donald Trump was asked if he would sign a bill delivered to him after passage in the House and the Senate to release the Epstein files, and he said this.
You urged House Republicans to vote in favor of this Epstein release bill they're going to vote on tomorrow. I just want to be super clear on your position. Do you want to see that pass the Senate? Would you sign that bill if it gets to your desk?
I do want to. Here's what I want. We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. Some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. But they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all.
Reality note, just have to interrupt here. Donald Trump spent more time with Jeffrey Epstein than any other political person mentioned in the Epstein files. Donald Trump is the only person, the only politician in the Epstein files who we've seen, as we are seeing right now, him captured on video and photographs, constantly partying with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein said he was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years, and he said that on tape. So no, the people Donald Trump wants to pretend were with Jeffrey Epstein all the time, as he put it, were not with Jeffrey Epstein nearly as much as Donald Trump was with Jeffrey Epstein at the peak of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal conduct before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with a crime. Here is how Donald Trump finished that answer about would he sign the legislation ordering the release of the Epstein files.
I'm for any. I don't. They can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because, honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends.
In a tweet, Donald Trump threw Bill Clinton's name on a list of men and told this lie. Records show that these men and many others spent large portions of their life with Epstein and on his island. Stay tuned. Jeffrey Epstein himself, in writing, said Bill Clinton never set foot on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Bill Clinton has said he never set foot on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And the records we have now of Bill Clinton's flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane do not indicate that Bill Clinton spent more than 2 trips to Europe and Africa on the Epstein plane, with a number of stops on each of those trips in Europe and Africa that looks like a lot of flights, but they are really just one trip with multiple stops. Those trips were less than 2 weeks long. And so the Epstein files are still really about Donald Trump, no matter what Donald Trump tries to say. And Donald Trump proves that he thinks the Epstein files are about Donald Trump because he has decided that his otherwise flawless ally, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is now what he calls a traitor because she was one of the original Republicans in the House supporting a vote on the release of the Epstein files. And Donald Trump, in tweets now, even after saying Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files, calls Marjorie Taylor Greene wacky Marjorie Traitor Brown and a traitor to our country. Marjorie Taylor Greene says those attacks by Donald Trump are putting her life in danger. And now Marjorie Taylor Greene is joining me in calling Donald Trump a liar, something I've been doing since 2011. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "President Trump just attacked me and lied about me." It's astonishing, really, how hard he's fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out, and he actually goes to this level. But I don't worship or serve Donald Trump. Most Republicans in the House and Senate have and do worship and serve Donald Trump. But if they see one or two, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, not just survive by defying Donald Trump, but beat him, win in their defiance of Donald Trump, beat Donald Trump, beat him publicly, then Donald Trump's grip on this government is looser tonight than it was yesterday. There's going to be a massive rebellion against Donald Trump in the House of Representatives when that vote is conducted tomorrow, and Donald Trump knew that. He knew that that vote was coming. And so Donald Trump has been trying to label it as something other than a rebellion. Donald Trump is trying to label it as now they're following his orders to vote to release the Epstein files. Thomas Massie has correctly identified what Donald Trump is really up to. And Donald Trump revealed that in a tweet on Friday when he said, quote, "I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, JP Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him." And so there's Donald Trump saying Pam Bondi was wrong on July 7th. The FBI was wrong. The Justice Department was wrong on July 7th when they put in writing that in their case closed statement, quote, "We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." And now Donald Trump has decided that uncharged third parties like Bill Clinton must be investigated, even though the Pam Bondi Justice Department and the Kashyap Patel FBI issued a written statement saying there's absolutely no evidence to do that. There is no predicate at all for investigating Bill Clinton or any other names in the Epstein files. And that's why it's not the Justice Department anymore. That's why it's the Trump Revenge Department. And Donald Trump will order an investigation of Bill Clinton and any other name in the Epstein files that he doesn't like. And that investigation, ordered by Donald Trump, will once again seal off the Epstein files, no matter what the vote in the House or Senate is. And that is the scheme, correctly identified by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who Donald Trump has been attacking since the day Thomas Massie launched his crusade to release the Epstein files. And Thomas Massie, and this is a lesson to all Republicans, Thomas Massie is still standing. Thomas Massie beat Donald Trump. Here is Congressman Massie yesterday, before Donald Trump told all Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files.
I think we could have a deluge of Republicans. There could be 100 or more. I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. And, you know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
And tonight, Thomas Massie, who continues to prosecute his case, added to that observation about the smokescreen Donald Trump will try to create to block the release of the Epstein files, no matter how big the vote is in the House and the Senate.
Well, I'm concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files. And that's my concern.
You think they'll try to block it?
Well, they will. I'm afraid they're going to try to use a provision of the law that allows you not to release these materials if they're subject of an ongoing investigation and would harm, and the release of which would harm the ongoing investigation.
So what do you think?
If they're serious about it, they should release them right now. So that's it. I do believe they'll try to stop it somewhere else, and that's going to backfire on them too.